Okay, everyone, we have about 2 minutes before Revolution Radio. And let's see here. What we're trying to do is make sure that we're streaming on all of our outlets, and we are right now. We are streaming on DLive, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and we are back on YouTube. We are out of YouTube jail. So we'll do our best to stay between the lines, but nevertheless, we are going to bring you the truth. So we'll be live in about 1 minute with America Free Radio on the Revolution Radio Network on freedomslips.com. Okay, let's see if we can go ahead and slide into the studio right now.
Standard time for open canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it submission? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
First hour, here we go. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might try to go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. And we're streaming to you live. Again, it's wonderful to be back, I'm telling you. We're streaming on Facebook and Twitch and Twitter and DLive and also back on YouTube. Yay, we're out of YouTube jail. On the Revolution Radio Network on freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported network in America. If you want to help out, you go to freedomslips.com and become a Patreon. Just make it a regular thing. $5 a month, you won't miss it. But if 100,000 of you do it, we can change the world. You don't understand what that little tiny bit of money can do to enlightening the world. All right, let's get into it. We have a lot of news to go over, and you'll need to take notes because there's going to be an exam at the end. We appreciate all of your support. Last couple of weeks, we were not on YouTube, and I was so surprised to see, so warmed and so, I don't know, I just felt calm and almost like I had a bunch of friends out there, because here you came, and there you were on DLive and Twitch, filling it in, and the numbers were there, the chats were there, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. I would not be here without you. All right, you've heard of the project called Belt and Road, right? This has been very, very strongly pushed by the LaRouche PAC for years and years. I've spoken to those folks over there. We've had them on the program several times. They've talked about the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, I never trusted it. I don't trust what's going on with the CCP. I don't trust their motives. I don't trust their methods, and now I'm not trusting the results. And I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Oh, by the way, I just welcome everyone in the chat room. Everyone's there. James 007, Blue Water, Lieutenant Dan. So glad to see you out there on DLive. Stoker, always great thoughts and inputs. Rough Draught. Yes, I was in YouTube jail. They determined that my piece on Journey to the Center of the Moon, which was about using the volcanic vents of the moon to build a moon base, a moon colony, to be able to begin mining the helium-3 and thus support the Artemis program and the Gateway program and be able to build out cislunar space and cis-Mars space. Nope, that was determined to be harmful to YouTube's community, and they struck it. So you cannot see that episode on Journey to the Center of the Moon on YouTube. But all of my YouTube episodes have been cloned on Odyssey, ODYSEE.com. So if you want to see that episode, you can go to Odyssey.com and you can watch it. No problem. Unfortunately, Odyssey only clones YouTube. So the last couple of weeks, those programs did not get cloned on Odyssey, and I'm sorry about that. You'll have to watch those on Twitch and Twitter, or Twitch and DLive. You won't be able to see them on Odyssey. And the other one that got struck was on Woke and Rich, where we covered the story about the BLM movement bringing in $2 billion, enriching the founders. One of the founders, Patrice Collier, has bought 4 houses with the money that she skimmed off the top of BLM, and no communities were helped with that. No communities were helped. So anyway, that's why I was struck, and it's their community, so they can do whatever they want. We'll just move on. Just want to let you know that we try to have the bases covered, and it's interesting. Freedom brings this up. This endless hatred of our nation has got to find a solution. The systemic hatred of these men and women of all colors, not just white, must end. And it's true. We don't really know what organizations like YouTube are doing. They're only hurting themselves, because when they take our listeners away, our listeners leave. When they take Red Pill 78's listeners away, 245,000 subscribers, they leave. They leave YouTube and they go to other services. When Joe Rogan leaves, they leave with him. They go with him. And when you start getting rid of the content providers that provide the content that bring the community to YouTube, it doesn't take, a brilliant mind to figure out you're ruining your community, because they're leaving. They're leaving. And other platforms will arise. Right now, there are only 4 platforms in the United States, just 4. And we're hoping that because there are 150 million of us here, I don't think 4 services can take it all. I think that the community is stratified enough that 4 services can't take it all. They just don't have enough server space. They don't have enough money. They don't have enough hardware to be able to stream that kind of content. So I really think we need 4, 5, maybe 6 more platforms out there, so that the talk radio community, and it goes everywhere from, women's empowerment all the way to, straight up patriots. It takes a special community to house those people. And some of these 4 that are still here, of course, we have Twitch and DLive, which are probably the 2 big ones. They're growing as fast as they can grow, but they're also censoring their communities. They're also saying, for instance, my program, even though it's based about 95% on hard science, is adult content. I think my content's PG-13, to tell you the truth. We don't use much profanity. We don't get really angry. We're not anti-government. We're very peaceful people here. All of us are intelligent and peaceful people. We don't attack individuals. We don't attack ideologies in a particular way. We are scientists. That's what we do here. But that is determined to be adult. I've appealed and been off of adult for a while, and now I'm back. So we'll see what effects that has. But I just think there's room for more platforms. And now we've seen Frank come along, and you can't stream live on that. We've seen LinkedIn try to come of age, and you can't live stream on that. And then we've seen a couple of other platforms that have come out that zoomed up in popularity, and many, many millions of people join, but you can't stream live on those. You can't stream live on Odyssey. You can't stream live on Foxhole unless you're invited, and it's a very, very small community. So, we're waiting. We're waiting for these platforms to come of age, and we'll bring all of our listeners with us, and they're a very lucrative listener base. Yeah, I get that, Mark, but I'm not going to say that on the air, okay? Just leave it in the chat room. I appreciate the thought. I really do, and I'm with you on that. So let's talk about this Belt and Road. It's actually been rejected by one of the Five Eyes. It's been rejected by Australia. Yeah, and this is a big deal. This is a big deal, and it comes at a very auspicious time. Australia tore up a set of agreements today linked to the contentious Belt and Road Initiative. It's called the BRI, but we'll continue to call it Belt and Road just so you understand what it is. And this is with the Communist Chinese Party, home-based in Beijing, China. The move is sure to provoke fury at the CCP headquarters, which has previously warned Canberra it will become the poor white trash of Asia unless it stops pushing back against the ruling Communist Party. These are provocative words. These are powerful words, and you have to understand that Chinese ships have been maneuvering in Australian waters. The Communist Chinese Party has been building artificial islands across the South Pacific there, heading toward Australia. These aren't resort places. No, these aren't places where the cruise ships stop and people fish and dive the artificial reefs. No. These have airstrips on them, bunkers on them, military supplies. These are designed to be places where planes can land and refuel and get maintained, and where they don't have to land on a carrier. And the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, is claiming these artificial islands as their property, even though they're sitting in international waters. And this has been going on for decades. They've been building these things, and Australia is appropriately nervous about it. And they don't want to be taken over by China any more than Taiwan wants to be taken over by China. Foreign Affairs Minister Marise Payne, that's Payne, issued a statement today to announce the two controversial BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative deals, were among 4 that were canceled under Australia's new foreign arrangements scheme. The cancellation was later confirmed by Australian government representatives posted overseas. The other 2 were older agreements with Iranian and Syrian entities canceled because they were inconsistent with Australia's foreign policy or adverse to our foreign relations, so they said. It is the first time the new powers have been used by the Conservative coalition government led by Prime Minister Scott Morrison. China is Australia's biggest trading partner. And to tell you the truth, they're probably the biggest trading partner in the whole region. And what does this mean? Well, trading isn't 50-50, even though Australia generates a lot of the beef that are used, the beef cattle that are used for food supply in Japan and in China. And as you know, China is the number 1 consumer of pork in the world. And so a lot of Australian pigs are being processed and shipped to China as well. And it's a lot closer. We could do it here from this country too, but it's, 10, 11 days to get pork to China from here, unless we ship it all the way across the country to California and put it on a boat. Australia is closer, and it's in their hemisphere. So that's why it's easier for Australia to supply these things. But that being said, China supplies a whole lot more to Australia than the other way around. And that's the way it is. That's the way it is in Egypt. That's the way it is in Pakistan. That's the way it is in all of the countries in Asia. It is that way. China supplies everything to everybody, from tourist trinkets to clothing to drugs to building materials. It's all provided by China. More than 1,000 existing and proposed foreign arrangements have been put to pain by states and territories, local governments, and public universities since the review launched on December 10th, which was just a few months ago. News reporters are saying Payne said she considered the China BRI arrangements with the southern state of Victoria to be, and I quote, inconsistent with Australia's foreign policy or adverse to our foreign relations, as I said. And I'm going to go ahead and leave a video. I may send the video link out in my newsletter. The newsletter is free, by the way. It comes out every Wednesday and every Sunday. And I will send that out to you for nothing. All you have to do is go to my website. Either one, you can go to brooksagnew.com or you can go to americafreeradio.com, and the link is right down here in the bottom in the description on all the services that are going out there. You follow that, click on the button. It's 2 things. I don't require very much from you, just a name and an email address, and you will get the newsletter twice a week. Most of the headline notes that I use for this program, and you can do your own research. Some of them have 20, 30 links in them, and it's great research material, especially if you have your own program. You can do that, or your own newsletter that you send out. Mailer Damon asked an interesting question. How did I end up on Lucky's program? Well, that's a good story. I was on the BBS radio network for 10 years. And arguably there I was one of the best hosts, or one of the most popular hosts. And what happened over the decade is the audience began to shift at BBS. it became more crystal crunchers, just more new agey. And my content, my listeners and my content wanted to go more toward the conservative side. And so it wasn't that I was looking, but I had appeared on Kristen Cherie's program a few times, and they had asked me, please, would you come over to our network? Well, that went on for about 2 or 3 years. And then, I guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago. Yeah, 7 years ago, I decided to make the switch. So January came up. It was a good stopping point, built all new calendars for the next year, and I made the switch to the Truth Frequency Radio Network. And that was fine for about 4 years, 5 years. Everything was going wonderful. Still going wonderful with America Free Radio, X Squared Radio. And Lucky was staff. She was like administration for Christian Cherie and for Truth Frequency. And when she came back to the States, she had a desire to start her own program. She obviously had facilitated many other hosts and was doing a fine job there. She had a desire to start her own program. So I decided that I would help her by co-hosting her program and help her get up and get running and build her audience. And evidently, the on-air relationship worked out pretty good because we had a little bit of conflict. We had two different sides, 2 different points of view on a lot of topics, and the audience liked it. They liked it. They liked us to talk out issues on the air. And so it was her program, her name, her headline, and then I was simply a sounding board, and it worked back and forth. And I think the audience has liked it, and we've done it now for about 4 years, and I think it's worked out pretty well. So I do that on Mondays, and then that for an hour on Wednesdays, and then we come here to the Revolution Radio Network here on freedomslips.com, and then Sunday night we do Truth Frequency for 3 hours. So Wednesday and Sunday, America Free Radio is on at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Once for 2 hours, once for 3 hours. And I still hold, a full-time job. I still work 70 hours a week. And I've had a little bit of a break between companies, but we went into negotiations today, and negotiations went well. So it looks like we're going to resume that schedule here pretty soon, a week or 2 at the most. And then hopefully, we're going to build some properties this year and try to make a transition. Now, of course, I would very much like to do this maybe another couple nights a week. And if it pays its way, that doesn't mean that you have to keep donating money every week. I have 11 books in print, and what I would very much like to do is get the sales of those books up to the point where they sort of quasi-support me. Now, the only way to do that, of course, is to share the availability of the books. And so I do that on this program, but we only have a few hundred listeners live. And then we have maybe 1,500 in the next week that come. And in a month's time, we have about 14,000 visitors. And those 14,000 visitors buy books every month and pretty consistently. We would like to see more. We would like to do some more live events. But as you know, live events have become a thing of the past and quite extinct during the Made-for-TV virus program. And we hate to see it. Believe me, I so miss the people. I love meeting the people. I love speaking to them live. I love signing books and setting things up with people. I just love that. And nothing has been harder on my heart than to be put in solitary confinement here in North Carolina and not be able to travel the world and see people. But we will hopefully resume that one day. We'll see what happens. I think that this puts a little bit of global stress on the world, what Australia has done. But I commend their courage, and I think that they should continue with it. The BRI is a massive global network of Chinese-funded infrastructure projects, including new ports, pipelines, rails, highways, stretching from Asia to Europe and considered a key part of Xi Jinping's desire to link Beijing with the global economy. But Australia has become another increasingly anxious continent that has been used as a vehicle for cementing the Chinese Communist government's influence and commercial interests across a vast swath of the globe. And that's why we see the global syndicate working so hard in this country to undo the Second Amendment, to undo the First Amendment, to make us dependent upon government. Part of the problem that I see in my job every day as I consult with the Fortune 800, they all have the same problem, just like you do. They have about a 13 to 15% absentee ratio. They cannot get people to come to work. They can't get them to come to work. 13 to 15% of their payroll, not salary, but hourly people, they don't come to work. They just lay out. And it's not because they're poor. It's not because they're not making money. The reason is because the federal government is competing against the employers for the same people. They're printing money and they're sending it to the employees. And when an employee is making $17 an hour to stay home, why would they go to work and make $14 an hour? They're just not going to do it, and they don't. And so that's what's hurting our country. And that's why you can't go to Lowe's and buy a refrigerator. And that's why you can't go to Ford and buy a car. And, oh, yeah. I'm going to talk about this tonight. This just came to me. Cold weather front, really chilling cold weather front is coming down the Midwest. And here in Charlotte, it's going to be right close to freezing tonight. It snowed the last couple of days in the Midwest. Well, we're going to talk about it a little bit. And there's more to this story with China because it's a multi-front war. It's a multi-front international world war that we've been fighting. Now, admittedly, China historically has never won a war outside of its own country. It just doesn't because its soldiers are not loyal to the motherland. Once they get out of China, if they were to invade the United States, come, bouncing across the Midwest, their soldiers would take off their uniforms, throw them in a ditch, and get a ranch in Oklahoma. Same thing happens in Australia. Same thing happens in Nepal and Tibet. And as soon as the Chinese soldiers are sent there, they get a wife, they have a family, they get a yak or a cow, a couple chickens, and they're happy. They don't fight for the motherland. And this is why China has always lost their wars. They can't send enough supply chain to feed everybody once they send them out. And they can't send enough Politburo officers out there to make sure that their soldiers don't defect, which is exactly what they do. Whether they're Olympians or whether they're soldiers, it's the same. So they fight other ways. They fight with other weapons. China's People's Liberation Army, they call it the PLA, allegedly ordered a hacker group to conduct cyber attacks on roughly 200 Japanese research institutions. Yeah, and their defense firms and their companies. And when did they do this? They did it during the Trump administration. They were attacking the Trump economy. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department referred a male member of the Chinese Communist Party to prosecutors yesterday on suspicion of forging digital records related to the cyber attacks. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, which, by the way, they're building equipment to go to the moon and build this moon base that YouTube thinks is spam, but it is happening. I can't delay it. I'm not going to not talk about it because I love space, as you can tell from my hat. I've been involved as a fan, as a supporter, as a technical provider for the space industry since I was in high school. And I'm here to tell you it's a real program, okay? We really do go to space, and we really are going to send men and women back to the moon. I'm sorry, if you think that's spam, I don't know what to do for you. I just don't know what to do for you. Okay, we are going back to the moon, and YouTube can't stop it. They can't stop it. It's going to happen. JAXA was among the firms targeted by the cyber attacks in 2016. The Japanese outlet claimed. Tokyo police have since identified a Chinese man who has leased several servers in Japan and was allegedly that were allegedly used in the attack. The man, who is no longer in Japan, by the way, is said to be a computer engineer in his 30s. He allegedly rented servers 5 times under false names, the broadcaster revealed. I wonder where he got the money to rent them. Costs a lot of money to rent servers. Cost me about $2,000 a year to rent mine. And that's just for this radio program. $2,000 a year is a lot out of my pocket. I can imagine what he had to spend to do what he did. The investigative sources say the server's ID and other credentials were then passed on to a Chinese hacker group known as TIC. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department said it suspects the Chinese PLA directed TIC, a private hacker group, to conduct cyber attacks on about 200 Japanese companies and research institutions, including Mitsubishi Electric and Tokyo's Keio University. A JAXA spokesperson spoke to the news department this week and confirmed the Japanese space agency did experience unauthorized access, but suffered no data leaks or other damage. That's a good way to save face. Meanwhile, another Chinese man is also said to have rented several servers in Japan using fake identities. This was allegedly under the instruction of a member of unit what's known as 61419. Now, I don't know if you know anything about international standards, but one of the international standards used to be TS 16949. And it was a quality standard. It lasted for about 10 years, and now it has reverted back to ISO, and it is now called IATF 16949. So 61419 is like a coded international standard. That's the way these units number themselves. It is a bureau in charge of cyber attacks within China's People's Liberation Army. Unit 61419, located in the eastern Chinese city of Qingdao, Shandong province, is responsible for cyber attacks on Japan and South Korea. Japan's Kyodo News reported Tuesday cited its own unnamed sources within the Tokyo police investigation. Kyodo News partially identified the second male in the case of, he's a former Chinese male student. The student who has since left Japan allegedly used a fake ID to rent a Japanese server. TIC later purchased the student's fake ID to access the server, which it then used to launch a cyber attack on a Japanese company. This process was also used by TIC to attack JAXA. When the 2 Chinese suspects were questioned before leaving Japan, investigators also found that the former student was receiving orders from a cyber attack unit within the PLA. So you can see this is a government-sponsored attack. It is also taking place in the United States. It's also taking place in Canada. It's also taking place in Europe. And it is taking place in Australia. So this is a world war. It's being fought what we call asymmetrically. It's being fought in a way that, when you think about cyber war, you think about Tron, you think about, other anti-hacker hackers that are fighting the other hackers. And we saw the result of this during the 2016 election. In 2015, when President Donald Trump announced that he was running for president, the first thing that happened was the current administration, which at the time was the Obama administration, consolidated the 17 intelligence agencies and aimed the very formidable intelligence weapons at Donald Trump. And, of course, he has his own forces as a businessman with holdings all over the world, over 500 businesses, which he runs and is profitable. And so to defend himself, he has his own cyber team. It's a small team, a very small team. And so when they were running for president, and when it became evident that he was winning the debates and he was creating a movement, the intelligence agencies began to send spies into his organization. Well, long story short, the Trump administration could not battle the CIA and the FBI and all of these secret organizations that world governments are afraid of. Our government was aimed at a presidential candidate. And so in order to counter that, they went for independent cyber capabilities, which became known as Q. And Q, which was a small group of very high security clearance individuals inside the Patriot movement, still were being overwhelmed. They were getting their butts kicked. And so they went out to a community that's been out there for a long time, since, I don't know, the early 90s. If you remember the movie Hackers, you remember the movie Hackers with Angelina Jolie and, that remember that movie? Well, that's essentially Anons. Anons are people that have anonymous identities, and they integrate with the cyber world. They're kind of hyper nerds. Some of them display very similar behavioral patterns, antisocial to say the least, but they're very talented, and they're very good at what they do. Some of them get caught at a young age, and they end up in juvie, and they're not allowed access to a computer till they're 21. You know what I'm talking about. Well, there are about 200,000 very talented Anons out there all over the world, from Romania to Los Angeles. And Q entered their board. This Q group went into their board and introduced itself, saying, we have high-level access in the upcoming administration. And the Anons said, bullcrap. We don't believe you. You're lying. You're just playing games with us. And so the Q group said, well, try us out. And so they did. And the Anons went after him. Oh, they went after him with everything they have. They were burning some server time somewhere. And guess what they found out? Q was real. Q was real. So instead of creating an enemy, created mutual respect. And he built the largest cyber army the world has ever known. And it was formidable. And they were able to hold their own against the American Intelligence Agency, and they won the election. Of course, it didn't stand. 4 years later, they just pulled out all the stops. And, well, you saw what happened in 2020. We've talked about it a bunch of times. There's just no way to battle it. Winning is everything. It doesn't matter how you win. It doesn't matter. Once you win, you can make policy, and that's what it is. So we're stuck there, and until and I've asked this question on my social media this week, and I'll ask the question in the chat room right now. Can I see a show of hands of you people that are listening live all over the world? Can I see a show of hands of those people who really believe that we can vote our way out of this mess? Because I'm not raising my hand. I don't think we can vote our way out of this mess. I don't think when 74 million people can be outvoted by 18 million people, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah, see, Wild Bill says nope. Exactly right. I'll bet you I could go out on the street And I wouldn't have to select, are you a patriot? Are you a communist? Are you an anarchist? I wouldn't even do that. I would just ask them the question, do you believe we can vote as Americans, vote our way out of this mess? I'll bet you 90% of the people say, hell no, can't be done. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem because we've always believed in our election system. We've always believed that we can go stand in line, exercise our American right to vote, and we can change things. We can win back the House. We can win back the Senate. We can put people in Washington that will represent us. But I'm seeing it again. Never again. While Bill Ruthie says, nope, nope, nope. Something epic is needed to win this. Everybody says this. I'm just telling you, it's going to be a 90% vote. 90% of this survey is going to be people are going to say, yeah, and Mailer Damon says Banana Republic. It's exactly right. The Democrats have a business model that works for them. It's called cheat by mail. It goes by a lot of different names, but you can't beat it. You can't beat it. In the book Charm a Favor, I call it Ballots Are Us. They just call up Ballots Are Us and say, look, we need 50 million ballots. Oh, really? Well, 50 million ballots, they cost about $20 a piece, these ballots. It's very high quality print. We have to duplicate the paper. We have to ship it. We take high risk, blah, blah, blah. No problem. We'll pay it. $20 a ballot. Think about it. 50 million ballots. 50 million ballots at $20 a piece is $1 billion. No problem. No problem. You accept cash? BLM had $2 billion to spend. $2 billion. And still had enough for Patrice Collier to buy 4 houses for herself. We're not voting our way out of it. I don't know what the solution is. The solution is knowledge, okay? The solution is making sure that you, the world, and specifically the American patriot, know what the problem is. That's what I do for a living. I state the problem. And if the problem is clearly stated, then you can develop, once you've done this root cause analysis, you can develop a process for correcting it. You could put corrective actions in place, and you could put preventive actions in place. I'm one of the best in the world at doing this. That's why the Fortune 800 buys me. They pay me for my ability. I have a special gift at it. I've been doing it a long, long time. Over 20 years professionally. 25 years. I got my Six Sigma Master Black Belt in 2002, and I've been doing it ever since. Yeah, so trust me, the skill set is there, and this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying this off the cuff. I've done my analysis. All right, I want to talk a little bit about this society in Illinois. I mentioned this in the Arc of Millions of years ago. There has been an archaeological dig in Illinois for a long time. And it's been quite remarkable because the first odd thing that you notice is this was a very, very large mining community. And this particular area of the world is unique in the sense that it has very high-grade copper mines. Very high grade. Like the copper is so incredible, so pure that it does not oxidize as quickly as copper from other mines. We're not really sure why, but we do know that copper mined from this particular mine is so bright, it's so shiny, that it was a piece of jewelry. It was used to make knife blades, surgical instruments, all kinds of decorations. And it was very easily plated with other metals like platinum and gold, which would make them, impervious to corrosion and be bright forever. And this particular copper can be forged. And forged copper, you can't scratch it with a file. You can't scratch it with a steel file. This is how hard this stuff can get. Now, as if that's not remarkable enough, what's remarkable is the tonnage that was mined out of this area. And then what's even more remarkable is the number of people it took to run this mine. A lot, like 15,000 people. 15,000 people ran this mine. And then the next remarkable thing is that there are no roads. There are no roads to move the copper. Now, this is during the Bronze Age, and bronze, as you know, is partly copper. So this copper made its way into other civilizations, other neighborhoods around the world, this particular copper. But there are no roads out of this area. And we're talking, this is a time when supposedly wagons had wooden wheels. Yeah, and they were pulled by ox. But there's, Illinois is not like L.A. It doesn't have a port. There's no way to get on a boat in Illinois and sail to Asia. And the whole St. Lawrence Seaway and all that didn't exist. The lakes were there, but they weren't connected. Okay, there was no way out. You had to go all the way down the Mississippi River. The problem is no roads, just forest land. There's no fossils, fossil record or historic record of roads anywhere. So the only way for this copper to get out was by air. It had to be flown out, and that's what's made this archaeological dig so attractive over the last 30 years. So for a couple hundred years, this area, which is known as Cahokia, it's a Cahokia, was the place to be in what is now the U.S. state of Illinois. The bustling, vibrant city was at one time home to 15,000 people, but by the end of the 14th century, abandoned, gone. And researchers still aren't sure why. The new study has been able to rule out one previous idea that deforestation and overuse of the land around Cahokia caused excessive erosion and local flooding in the area, making it less inhabitable for Native Americans. Through an analysis of sediment cores, which were gathered near eastern mounds in the Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site, researchers have established that the ground remains stable from Cahokia's heyday until the mid-1800s and industrial development. In other words, there was no environmental disaster. There's a really common narrative about land use practices that lead to erosion and sedimentation and contribute to all these environmental consequences, said geoarchaeologist Caitlin Rankin from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She says, when we actually revisit this, we're not seeing evidence of the flooding. The mounds that the excavation site was next to are in low-lying areas and close to a creek, a prime position for any local flooding that would have happened. It would have washed out that creek. It would have eroded down to the rock. Yet there was no sign of sediment left behind by the flood in the layers of earth. It's clear that the people who lived in Cahokia cut down a lot of trees, but probably to make defensive fortifications. However, the new research shows that this didn't lead to the sort of erosion and flooding that would drive people away from their homes. In this case, there was evidence of heavy wood use, but that doesn't factor in the fact that people can reuse materials, much like you might recycle. We should not automatically assume that deforestation was happening or that deforestation caused this event. Cahokia remains a fascinating topic for experts, with a study published last year using an analysis of ancient human feces to discuss or suggest that people had begun to return to Cahokia in substantial numbers well before European settlers arrived in the 16th century. It's possible that the desertion of the metropolis didn't actually last that long. The mess we're making of looking after the planet at the moment makes it easier to imagine ecocide, being responsible for some of the unexplained mysteries of the past. The team behind the new study says, but it's important to keep digging to find the hard evidence as to what actually happened. By eliminating this possibility, it moves us toward other explanations and requires us to pursue other avenues of research. And that came from the anthropologist Tristram Kidder from Washington University in St. Louis. And by the way, this research was published in the book in the paper Geoarchaeology. It fascinates me. It's a little late coming. My evidence in the arc of millions of years goes back to 500 AD, when this copper mine was discovered and when this copper began to proliferate around the planet. Explorers in this area, when they discovered this area from Europe, as explorers came to this area, one of the things that they noticed was the jewelry of this very, very bright copper. It really catches the eye. And some of those trinkets were taken back to Europe. Quite the prize, quite the prize. Thank you so much for the compliment in the chat room. And by the way, you'll notice at the bottom of YouTube, there's a little square with a $sign in it. That's Top Chat. And I believe that our rights have been restored, so you can donate money there. At the top of the YouTube Live, and of course at both of my websites, at brooksagnew.com and americafreeradio.com, you can become a Patreon of this program. Very little money is required, or requested. $5 is not too much to ask. And obviously, if we can get enough people to contribute, I can make a transition from consulting with the Fortune 800 for 70 hours a week to spending more time with you. As you know, the webinars on Manifestation Masterclass are now a year old. We've been doing them every month for a year, and fantastic response. Unbelievable students from all over the world, from South Africa, from Australia, from Europe, from California, all over the place, and so pleased with the results of the class. Now, that being said, July 10th, we have a free event. Yes, July 10th, we have an alumni reunion. So all those students that took the Manifestation Masterclass and the journal craft that follows the following Saturday, which allows you to learn how to begin to put a journal together to make your future occur. I do it all the time. I have my bookcase behind me has stacks of journals that I've been writing over the years, and I can open them up and say, oh, wow, here's this project, because it's my future book. I've been doing it since I was 17 years old. I got super good at it. I helped the Fortune 800 make billions of dollars with my techniques over the years, and I said, well, you know what? I can't go out and lecture because the made-for-TV virus has ruined the world. And so I can do it from home. So I started putting the webinar together. And last March of 2020 was the first live presentation that we did as a webinar. I was a newbie. I took the live lecture that we do before a couple thousand people live on stage with a big screen and a microphone clipped to my lapel. And we transferred it so that I could do it face-to-face with you on this camera and do the same slideshow. And, of course, it's way enhanced because there are things I can do on stage that I can't do here in this studio. So I had to create the animations, draw the stuff myself, and be able to bring it to you on the program. And it worked very, very well. So July 10th, we're going to have a free alumni event. And all you have to do is go to my website at brooksagnew.com, click on the webinars link, and it's right there. It's right there. I ask that you RSVP so I know how much beer to buy for me. I'm kidding. But it would be nice to know how big the class is going to be. If it's going to be a couple hundred or a couple thousand, I need to know because I have to make arrangements with the online streaming company so I can handle that many people. It just would be nice. Thank you so much, Stoker, for that generous contribution. It is it is, you're testing. So Patreon's better, but Top Jet does work, and I super appreciate that very much. All right, let's talk a little bit about silver, because I have advocated over the years and I've followed my own advice that if you have a large amount of cash, and what I mean by cash you don't spend each month, you don't need it for bills, it sits in your checking account and it looks good, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000. Some people have $20,000 in their checking account, and it's not working for you. Fine, don't invest it, just leave it there. Or if you have cash at the house in a cigar box, I'm not saying that I have too much cash in my cigar box right now, but that cash that just sits around, I recommended taking 25% of it and converting it into silver. And I think it was sound advice, because silver is currency, and I've used those bars to buy everything from computers to motorcycle parts. And it works just fine. The reason I say that is you just want to hedge, and that's what it is. It's a hedge against the monetary system going through some kind of global hiccup. Maybe a whole bunch of counterfeit dollars come in, and so the banks have to say, hold on. We need you to bring all your cash back to the bank so we can go through it. Well, that's pretty difficult to do. You know, if you got $10,000 at home, I know people that have way more than that. They can't take it back to the bank because it's called structuring. As soon as you show up to the bank with more than $10,000 in cash, the FBI comes and confiscates it from you, because cash is the currency of crime. If you have cash on your hand, cash in your pockets, you're obviously committing some kind of crime, because nobody needs cash. You have debit cards for regular everyday business. Nobody uses that much cash. Well, yes, they do. And the point is, the monetary system could undergo some kind of artificial stress, but silver will save your butt. And I wish you would have taken my advice before, because now you can't. Every physical bar of silver in this country has been oversold 1,000 times. The silver price today, half of the January 1980 level. That was the peak of $50, and silver's never reached it again. In 31 years, it's never gotten back to $60. Freedom, I'm humbled to the dust. Says Pear character, looking at himself in the mirror, saying, thanks for being you, with hearts popping out of his eyes. Thank you so much. And a generous contribution in Top Chat. I appreciate that more than you know. Believe me, all that money is being accumulated, it's being grown, and we're trying to build a base so that we can do the North Pole Inner Earth expedition. Obviously, it takes a lot of money to even make the first move. It takes about, to do a GoFundMe, minimum takes about $30,000. To do one properly for a project this size takes about $60,000. It takes $30,000 to do the initial GoFundMe, and then it takes $30,000 for marketing. And about $60,000, you can raise about $2 million. It is difficult to do. It is not always successful, but we're using one of the best GoFundMe companies in the world. So that's what it takes. I'm currently trying to raise the money myself. If you don't do it, I'm going to do it by myself. Even if it takes me 2 or 3 years to put it together, I will do it. If you do it, help me. $2, $3, $4, $10, $20 at a time. We can get to that $30,000 number and we can make it happen. We'll let Revolution Radio take its quick break, and then we'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth.
as opposed to fiction.
And Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and there were giants in earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came and also the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope. We've tried and we've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Well, here we are. I was looking up something for one of the listeners. Wanted me to find the link to the National Institute of Health article that I ran last week on the Sunday program. And I have it, but I don't have the link, but I have my story. So what I will do is I will search for the link, and I will put the link to that story down here in the description, and then that way you can access it after the program and go for it. How about that? Does that work? Because I don't have a way to cut it and paste it into the chat room. Otherwise, I would do it. But it was a National Institute of Health study on masks and how effective they have been during the COVID-19. So, yeah, I will do that. So I want to talk a little bit about silver, because the current silver price, a lot of people don't know this. They don't trust it. The current silver price has absolutely nothing to do with supply and demand. Normally it would. If the banks had not done what they have done with silver, and we're talking about bullion as well as the hard metal, we wouldn't be suffering this. In a real market, the price of silver would be substantially higher. I don't know if it would be $500 an ounce, but it would be something higher. Right now it's about 1/61st that of gold. In a fake market like we're in right now, the manipulators, what we call market makers and short traders, have no problem to suppress the price by selling virtually unlimited fake paper silver. It's called bullion. It's traded on the market. And one of the things that they do with this is they actually sell short contracts. Now, obviously, Morgan Stanley has the largest silver vault in the world. Everyone knows this. So they should be long on silver, which means they have the metal, so just be long on silver. But they're also selling short contracts on silver. Now, is it illegal? I'm not sure. I talked to my SEC lawyer friends, golf with them, and they can't tell me. It's a fine line. If it's made illegal, it'll create a crack in the space-time continuum of finance. That's the kind of force that it will have. Because where you have one bar of silver in the vault, you have 1,000 owners of that bar. Obviously, they can't deliver physical metal to 1,000 owners. So they sell a paper version of that silver. Now, obviously, if somebody says, hey, I have my certificate, I want to turn it in, and I want my silver, they can't deliver, and it would cause a global collapse. Every single ounce of physical silver has about 1,000 paper claims against it. I don't have any bullion. I don't buy the paper. I don't believe in it. I own the silver bars. They're stacked in my safe. If a salesman had a demand for 1,000 times of a product which he possesses the only one available, he will first rub his hands and then perform a victory dance. He knows he will achieve an astronomical price because those 1,000 people will bid against one another for that silver. And that is exactly what would happen in a free silver market. But since the paper silver issuers know that they're dealing with totally brainless, clueless buyers who don't understand that there is no silver, they will continue to stuff the gullible buyers with more fake silver paper. That is until the buyers wake up, if they listen to this program, and ask for delivery to find out if that silver is really there or if the vaults are empty. We know that the silver market is very strained already, and I'm going to give you some proof here in a second. Retail silver can fetch margins of up to 50%, and they have been at 100% premium. But at least when people buy retail silver from a reputable dealer and take delivery, they know they have the real silver. It has a serial number on it, it has a mine on it, it has a mint on it. They have warned investors many times not to buy gold or silver ETFs or these funds. Don't buy into these funds of any kind. The risks are are leverage. They're multiple risks. And here are some of the risks. So if you hear these people saying, invest in our company and we buy silver. We own the silver, we'll hold the silver, and you invest in our company. Don't do it. It is a paper security held within the financial system. It has multiple counterparty risks. The gold and silver holders are not segregated from the custodian's assets. In other words, if it collapses, guess who's going to get the silver? They are. You're not getting it. They are. They're going to be packing it out of there in wheelbarrows. It owns no gold or silver directly. The gold silver is stored within the banking system. The gold silver held is probably what's called rehypothecated. Hypothecation is a financial instrument that allows you to leverage 10 to 1, sometimes even more than that, the actual asset. Gold and silver is not fully insured like a deposit is in a bank. And by the way, it's only insured to, I think, $120,000. And if you read the fine print, let's say you have $200,000 in the bank and the bank goes under. Well, you're insured to $120,000, but if you read the fine print, you're not going to get the interest. You're only going to get your principal, and they have up to 10 years to deliver it. 10 years. It isn't what you think it is. And if your account is tied to a money market, like a lot of times bankers will convince you, hey, we could pay you, 0.5% interest on your money in the bank. And if you hold a $5,000 or more balance, we're not going to charge you a monthly fee of $15. Guess what? Your money's not insured. If it's tied to a money market fund, if they use the word money market, if you see the word money market on your paperwork, not insured. Not insured. Investors have no access to their gold and silver. You can't see it, you can't hold it in your hands, and you can't take it home. So, and there have been problems at the Perth Mint. Again, John Evans of As Good as Gold Australia has reported extensively on the problems at the Perth Mint. Numerous investors holding paper or synthetic silver with the Perth Mint are reporting delays of 4 months, and it's not the only one. Normally, if you go to eBay, you can go to Silvertown or some of the other mints, and you can buy minted bars, serial number bars, 99.99% pure silver. Normally, you take delivery in about, usually by priority mail, 3 to 5 days, free shipping. That's what I always go for. You can't do that now. If you go to eBay and you buy at Johnson Matthey or you buy from Silvertown, it is now 2 months. Right now, they're promising an estimated, and look at the red words, estimated delivery date, May 15th. Hello, it's April 21st. It's April 21st. You're expecting me to wait till May 15th? Oh, yes, at least. Because if they can't find your silver bar by May 15th, they may refund your money. Or they may write you again and say, if you're willing to wait another couple of weeks, we'll still deliver your bar. But here's the thing. If you pay for that bar, because you're buying on eBay, you pay for that bar on PayPal, guess what you can't do? You can't ask for a refund. After 30 days, you cannot ask for a refund. That's a big problem. It's a big problem. It is buyer beware. So if you're going to buy silver bars right now, make the transaction face-to-face with somebody. There are people out there. I would sell silver bars if I had to buy something and I had to convert into cash. That's what I would do. You can buy from an individual face-to-face. Don't buy from an individual over the mail. Buy from a reputable mint like Silvertown or Johnson Matthey or Perth, but make sure of that delivery date. Remember, you cannot trust the bullion banks and their paper representation of the metals. You can't trust certain mints or bullion dealers. You can't trust gold or silver ETFs. Absolutely do not buy into those funds. You can't trust futures exchanges. That's not going to work because that's hugely risky. And you can't trust banks to hold your metals. Don't put your metals in your safety deposit box. Don't do it, because if you die, it goes into probate. If the bank goes under, you lose your money. You lose your silver. Put the silver in your safe. Put your safe in your house. Put your gun safe next to your regular safe. That's how you can control it. And it takes a lot. Yes, gold is a little more crazy than silver. Put it this way. If I go on the street and I have a Snickers bar, king-size Snickers bar in this hand, and I have a 10-ounce silver bar in this hand, a minted silver bar. And I went on the street and I asked people, which would you rather have? Would you rather have the Snickers bar or would you rather have the silver bar? I can guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they will take the Snickers bar. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Silver just doesn't do it for people. They just don't get nutso over it. Gold is very different. Gold has a primordial rage factor to it. Gold will get you killed. If you try to store a lot of gold at your house and you let somebody know you have gold at your house, you're running a real risk. Gold drives men crazy, and they'll kill for it. I promise you, a gold ring and that Snickers bar, the gold ring. People would take the gold every time. Gold just has that thing about it. It just has a thing about it. So check it out and make sure you buy from a reputable mint and make sure that you look for short delivery. Make sure they have the silver on hand. It doesn't matter if you look there and it says, 2,560 sold in little red letters. Don't pay any attention to that. Look for the amount on hand. Look for the delivery date. If that delivery date's 3 weeks or more out, they don't have the silver. They're using your money to buy the silver. They're hoping the price goes down. You just bought it at, let's say, $36 an ounce. They're hoping it goes down to $32 an ounce, and they get to make $4 on you. I'm sorry. That's what they're doing. They're speculating with your money. Yes, Scottsdale's another one. Scottsdale's another reputable mint. Johnson Matthey's one of the oldest and most reputable mints, so Silvertown. There are other mints, and you'll become familiar with them if you go to eBay and shop around. You'll see all the mints sell there. Some have free shipping and some don't. All right. What? Cryptocurrency? If you want to play with that, you can. There are a couple ways to do it. I use Coinbase, which doesn't access every cryptocurrency. Like I can't buy a doggy coin with Coinbase. They just don't deal with that coin. They have, I think, 20 or 21 different cryptocurrencies that you can buy with Coinbase. But there are some like, Robinhood. Robinhood is what we call the loser's board because they don't charge a fee and it's easy to trade, and you just take your money from your ACH, your automated clearinghouse account, and you move it into Robinhood. It's very easy to do, and it's very easy to lose your money, especially when you're dealing with individual stocks. You're not buying into a mutual fund that has 30 stocks in it or 50 stocks in it. You're buying individual stocks, which is what we call the loser's board. You can buy cryptocurrency on the loser's board. And if you have the money to blow, have at it. It's fun. Take $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 and put it in the loser's board and play with it. And some days you'll cry and some days you'll clap. But you can sell it pretty easy and you can move the money back into your checking account pretty easy. They don't care. I mean, less than 10% of the people make any money on Robinhood. Everybody, 90% of the people lose their money because nobody knows how to invest in stocks. You can't go by what the market makers are saying. We recommend buy, we recommend hold, we recommend sell. You can't go by that. You have to go by your own insider trading. Read the newspaper, do your own research, know what's going to happen in the industry, and be willing to wait. Like I buy lithium mines. And it's cheap, less than $1 sometimes. I have to buy that through Ameritrade because you can't do penny stocks on the loser's board, but on Robinhood. But I buy lithium mines and, put a few $1,000s in there and wait. And when the assays come in and the lithium mine begins delivering to the battery companies, the price will go up. It will take time, but you have to do your research. You have to know your market. You're doing insider trading basically because you're doing your own research. You gain your own inside information, and so you make your investment and go that way. And that's the way trading's done. And if you make money, congratulations. It's a wonderful game, and without you doing it and other people doing it on Robinhood, all these companies would go out of business. They would, because they can't borrow money. They have to get it off of publicly traded markets. And that's just the way it is. I've owned companies before. I've had publicly traded stock before, penny stocks, pink sheets, stuff like that. It is a good way to raise money because you don't have to pay it back. You can spend it any way you want to spend it. And companies do. When they raise the money off the stock market, they buy capital equipment, they hire better staff, they build new buildings, and they don't have to pay the money back. But without you, the whole industry comes to a screeching halt because they don't have access to capital any other way. All right, let's talk about this cold front, because people in my house dropped me a note, said, do I need to take my plants in tonight? It's going to be 36 degrees outside. I said, yeah, you do, because you could frost and kill the plants that you're trying to pot and get ready for the garden. This goes along with an ongoing story that we've done for about a couple of years, and we talked about it in Arc of Millions of Years because these are nonfiction series, 2,000 pages on the origin and destiny of the Earth. And one of the things that we discuss in there is climate change relative to global cooling, not global warming. I'm a mathematician, not a climatologist, so I look at data. I'm a nerd. I like data. And I crunch it. I do statistics on it. I look for trends. I look for patterns and nodes and make predictions using that data. That's why the Fortune 800 trusts me, because I'm good at it. Well, when I look at the data, I don't see the Earth warming. I see the Earth cooling. In fact, because our atmosphere is thinning because of the low activity from the sun, the heat from the sun, infrared and ultraviolet, can reach the surface of the Earth more easily, especially when there's no high cloud cover. And when that infrared energy reaches the Earth, it warms the ocean and it warms the land during the summer months. Now, as you know, the Earth's orbit is elliptical around the sun. It's not a perfect circle. It's more like an egg. In our winter, the northern hemisphere's winter, we're at the closest to the sun, but we are tilted 23 degrees away. So it's our winter time, but planetary-wise, we're closer to the sun, so we're actually getting more energy from the sun. In our summertime, the Earth is further away from the sun, and that's why what we experience is hotter summers and colder winters. It's more intense both ways. Why? Because in the summertime, our atmosphere doesn't provide us protection from that heat, so it comes and strikes the surface. And if you go outside in the summertime in the northern hemisphere, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can feel it on your skin. It's painful. You need to wear long sleeve shirts. If you go outside in the summer sun now, with the atmosphere as thin as it is, you'll receive an 8-hour exposure to short wavelength ultraviolet light in 15 minutes. An 8-hour supply in 15 minutes. If you're in direct sunlight with no high cloud cover in the northern hemisphere in the summertime, more than 15 minutes, you're going to get skin cancer. Very high probability that you will, because that ultraviolet light is dimerizing your skin's DNA. It's splitting the double bond in your DNA, and it can result in mutations, which can be cancers. So don't do it. In the wintertime, we don't have the insulative blanket of a high atmosphere around the Earth to retain the heat that was gained during the summer, so it leaks out into space. That's why we have colder winters and we have warmer summers. Now, in the past, when we've had a quiet sun like this, without solar flares, without sunspots, the sun doesn't contribute enough mass through ejections and things like that to pile onto the atmosphere of the Earth, not just particles but also cosmic rays that sputter off and build other subparticles in the atmosphere to build up our atmosphere. And our atmosphere is pretty big around Earth. You know, we can fly in it up to about 100,000 feet, but it goes way beyond that. Some of our atmosphere stretches all the way to the moon. That's like 250,000 miles. Yeah, really. On the leeward side from the solar wind, our atmosphere goes around the moon. It's thin, very thin, but it's there. Now, normally, it insulates our planet and it filters the sunlight to the Earth, but we don't have that right now. So what happens is we reach a point where snow falls on the Earth and it stays. It stays into the summer, into April, into May, into June. I've heard of people skiing in July. Yeah, in the mountains. So what happens is in August or September, you get a chilly night and it snows again on last year's snow. It snows on last year's snow. That's what's called a glacier. That's what's called a glacier. And every single major glacier in the world is growing. And they're growing at an alarming rate, like yards and yards and yards a year. Even Antarctica is rearranging its ice cover. Some of it is falling off into the ocean, and other parts of it are building up. So the actual total land mass, ice mass of Antarctica is growing, which means more sunlight is reflecting back out into space. And when that happens, the Earth doesn't warm. And when the Earth doesn't warm, it reaches a point of a tipping point, which we call an ice age. So this unusually cold front moved into central U.S. early this week, just like it did last year, just like it did the year before. In fact, in 2020, we had the coldest February in history, in ever, as long as records have been kept. The coldest February in California history. And that's happened 2 years in a row. The entire month of February, it never got above 70 degrees. That doesn't happen. That has never happened before, but it's happening now. And the question LA is asking in the chat room is this true for both poles? It is. In the North Pole, we have the Arctic. Now, the Arctic is different than the Antarctic in that most of the ice sits on the water. It sits on the water, okay, in the Arctic Ocean. And there's a type of ice which we call red ice. If you look at the map of the Arctic, red ice lasts through the summer and gets snowed on the following year. So in the late 2000s, 2007, 2008, the red ice shrunk. Big pieces of it broke off. The Arctic Ocean was a little warmer than normal, and it was just an anomalous few years, and the red ice actually shrunk. But by 2011, the red ice was expanding again, and by 2014, the red ice was as big as it was in 2006. It is back. So now the red ice is as big as it's ever been, and it's to the point where it may go all the way from Russia to Canada. And if that happens, then you're going to be reflecting a lot of light back out to the sun. From Canada to the U.S. border to Texas, we had a polar vortex that pushed down. It was about a month ago, and it snowed all the way to Houston. You remember this, right? When the power went out and the power stations couldn't get any energy from outside states because the Democrats wouldn't let it in, and a lot of places went without power for a few days. But that wasn't the most peculiar part about that particular weather front. The other peculiar part about that weather phenomenon is it occurred, just like I said, pushing all the way down to Houston. And I've seen it snow terribly in New Orleans back in 2012. It's not unusual. What was unusual is that it did it in Europe, freezing part of the Thames River for the first time in 60 years, and it did it in Asia, snowing all the way down to Beijing. That's what I'm saying. 3 continents at the same time were experiencing this polar vortex. How can that happen? Well, it happens because what occurs normally with the jet stream is you look at it on a globe. It's a little more difficult to do. We normally look at it on a flat map on the TV. The jet stream undulates, okay? It forms a kind of sinusoidal wave that goes around the country, around the planet. And the low valleys of this undulation is what we call the polar vortex, where it's bringing high latitude, sometimes high altitude air and pushing it down into, with these high pressure fronts, pushing it down into areas that doesn't normally see it. Normally, those undulations are fairly high frequency. That is to say, they go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. But because the sun has been so quiet, and we're not getting the electromagnetic interference, geomagnetic interference that we normally see from the sun, and the Schumann resonance happens to be fairly low because we don't have the plethora of lightning strikes that we normally see around the world, that frequency lengthened out. It got longer. So now the valleys of that undulation went down in North America, down in Europe, and down in Asia. And that is very rare. In fact, I don't think it's ever happened before. Certainly well before we had satellites, and well before then when we were actually measuring temperature on the ground. And real science, we measure temperature much more accurately on the ground than we do from space. And truth be told, the temperature measurements that are done on the ground with a thermometer are less likely to be manipulated than the ones by climate activists than the ones that are taken by satellite. The ones that are taken by satellite come down by computer and they go, we don't like that temperature, so we're going to put, we'll put this one in. And that changes all the models. And no, we've seen that happen. They just change the temperature data to fit their narrative, and screw you, we're going to go for our narrative and not the truth. Well, that doesn't happen when you take the measurement on the ground because you have a real thermometer and a real record and a real paper record to keep it on a chart. And it's very difficult to fudge that. So, we're on the edge of what may be an ice age. The record-breaking cold has settled in this morning across the central U.S. And I played golf this last weekend. I wore a long-sleeve shirt, never broke a sweat. Never broke a sweat. Normally I do when you're playing in the sunshine like that. Never broke a sweat. Never really got hot, okay? Today, the sun was out. I was thinking, I'll get done with my business early in the day and maybe we'll go out. No, it was 63 degrees at 2 o'clock. That's not usual for North Carolina. Normally we'd be 75, 78 degrees today. And the same is happening on the other continents as well. A cross-polar flow drops in Arctic levels of frost freeze temperatures in the late spring season. This is now almost May. Additional record cold pushes east into Thursday morning as well before things start to moderate into the weekend. Further west, it was colder, yes, but more records were broken today versus yesterday. None of this should be surprising to my listeners, as we have been noting for quite some time that commodity traders were anticipating a cold spell that was supporting corn prices. We also noted that freezing temperatures could have a profound effect on seedling development this spring. You know that we're talking about seeds in the ground, no effect. It can sit there under the snow all winter long. But once that thing pops through the ground, once that sprout comes through the ground, if it frosts that sprout, that crop is gone. That plant will never grow. Happens with potatoes, happens with other plants as well. If that green comes through the ground and it freezes, it's done. It's done. Planting corn in cooler climates is still possible, but colder soil can take corn kernels much longer to germinate and increase the risk of seedling death. Volatile weather for the heartland could impact crop yields at the end of this year's growing season. So what we are seeing is what we have been predicting for quite some time, and doing this with data, that what the farm belt is slowly at first being pushed south. Right now, the wheat belt tops out in Alberta, Canada. Yes, they grow rapeseed and all that, which is the basis for canola oil. But I'm talking about wheat. Wheat starts in about Alberta, Canada, and pushes south. If you push the wheat belt 300 miles south, it will be pushed roughly to Oregon. Okay? It'll be pushed through Washington State all the way past to basically Billings, Montana. Okay? If the wheat belt gets pushed that far south, we lose about 40% of our wheat production, the way we have it now, because there are hundreds of thousands of acres that are used to grow hard red winter wheat, which is the main wheat supply. If you push the wheat belt south because you can't get enough warmth to grow the wheat, the snow melts way too late, and you start pushing the wheat belt south, you're going to impact the global food supply. It means you're going to have to start growing some of these crops further and further south. And you know and I know, as you go further south, the land mass begins to shrink. If you push the farm belt 300 miles south, you're going to have to start farming well into Mexico. Right now, that doesn't happen. Nope, doesn't happen. They're doing other things, but they're not doing that. So look for that and prepare, okay? You can store hard red winter wheat for about 20 years with the right vacuum packing. It is heavy. It is hard to move. And storing wheat ain't easy. You got to have a wheat grinder. You got to have a way to bake. You got to have yeast. I mean, it isn't easy to do. There are lots and lots of ways to store food that are easier to eat, easier to use, easier to transport. Wheat ain't one of them. And wheat isn't actually that good for the human body. It's filled with gluten and other things. It's a good supplement, but not the staff of life, as some people say. All right, I need to talk to you a little bit about nuclear proliferation. The U.S. Strategic Command yesterday issued a very strange tweet, and we don't like to see this stuff come from Strategic Command. I was in Strategic Command up in Grand Forks, North Dakota. I was in the 319th AMS, which is the Air Maintenance Services Group. But we were ground zero for whatever attack was going to happen on the U.S. because we managed all the missile silos up there. So SAC is not something that you like to see cryptic tweets from. But this is what came out. They tweeted about U.S. adversaries conducting a nuclear strike as their least bad option. Yeah. The spectrum of conflict today. And I'm not saying that we're actually in conflict. We've actually gone 4 years without a war, which is kind of rare. That's one of the wonderful things I thank President Donald Trump for, is that he really did put his money where his mouth is. He did build up the military, and he did follow the philosophy that the best way to peace is a strong military. It's true. Nobody's going to F with you if you have the biggest, strongest military, which, of course, it was decimated during the Obama administration. Sequestration just about killed it. Broke my heart. All my military friends and in the military business center were wearing little pins that had hash mark through sequestration. It was a terrible policy and almost ruined our country. And it took a lot to come back from that. It took about $3 trillion to come back from that. But we did. And to hear Stratcom adding, and I quote, "We must account for the possibility of conflict leading to conditions which could very rapidly drive an adversary to consider nuclear use as their least bad option," close quote. We've already blown off more than 2,600 of these things, and we've screwed up the planet forever because of the result of that. We, as a nation, have been the only one to actually use nuclear weapons in battle. It may or may not have actually accomplished its goal, but and that's a matter of historical debate. I, of course, have a degree in nuclear chemistry. I did my postgraduate work at Oak Ridge. I've held sand in my hands from ground zero at the Trinity Blast. So I know what I'm talking about here. The ominous tweet from America's top strategic defense and global strike command comes on the same day as Stratcom Commander Admiral Charles Richard warned the Senate Armed Services Committee, and this is a committee that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz sits on, that China's nuclear capabilities are increasing rapidly, and they may be, for the first time, primed for use. And they could go out, they could proliferate through a variety of terrorist networks. He said, "I can't get through a week right now without finding out something we didn't know about China." That's what he told senators, alongside Army General James Dickinson, head of the U.S. Space Command, who also said that China was among his top military concerns as they advance in space-based military technology, according to Stars and Stripes. Now, this is the same China that Virtual Joe said is not our enemy. This is the same China that Virtual Joe says we should be supporting. And this is the same China that Lyndon LaRouche and LaRouche PAC has been supporting as the Belt and Road Initiative. Stratcom's tweet sparked panic, a panicked response from me and from several of my friends and other people that are wondering why Virtual Joe would suddenly tweet about nuclear war as part of the agency's annual posture statement, designed to inform Congress about the current status of affairs with the agency and around the world. I feel like this isn't something to spring on us in a freaking tweet, okay? I mean, what is a worse option than nuclear war? Well, I'm going to share with you Vladimir Putin's speech. President Vladimir Putin today sternly warned the West, mainly he's talking about NATO, against encroaching further on Russia's security interests, saying Moscow's response will be quick and tough and make the culprits feel bitterly sorry for their action. The warning came during Putin's annual State of the Nation address, came amid a massive Russian military buildup near, not on, near the Ukraine border, where ceasefire violations in the 7-year conflict between Russia-backed separatists and Ukrainian forces have escalated in recent weeks. The United States and its allies have urged the Kremlin to pull the troops back. Yes, but you need to understand why those conflicts are occurring. The separatists want to become part of Russia. They're basically the states of Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, they're in kind of the middle of Ukraine area, so it's difficult to say, oh, they're right on the border. It's not like, Oregon losing territory to Idaho, which is right next to it, which is, by the way, about to happen. I think it may happen. In fact, there are several counties that don't like Oregon. They don't like the murderer Karen Brown as the governor. She's such a dictator and has been so horrible as a human being in that state that several counties are now saying we'd rather become part of Idaho. You know, the little skinny portion of the hat up at Idaho where they're going to expand that into Oregon and become part of Idaho, more conservative, and get away from the flaming communists in Oregon. And that's what Luhansk and Donetsk want to do. What has happened is NATO has said, no. We're going to send forces in there, and they did, in the form of these Nazi SS street fighters that have come in and have broken the ceasefire. Now, this is what Putin said. It's important that you listen closely. I'll try to say it as well as I can. I hope that no one dares to cross the red line in respect to Russia. And we will determine where it is in each specific case. Those who organize any provocations threatening our core security interests will regret their deeds more than they regretted anything for a long time. We really don't want to burn the bridges. But if some mistake our good intentions for indifference or weakness and intend to burn or even blow up those bridges themselves, Russia's response will be asymmetrical, quick, and tough. Now, as Putin spoke, a wave of protest started rolling across Russia's Far East in support of imprisoned opposition under leader Alexei Navalny. The politician who is Putin's most persistent critic and was poisoned with a chemical nerve agent last year, he survived, started a hunger strike 3 weeks ago to protest what he said was inadequate medical treatment and officials' refusal to allow his doctor to visit him. Now, Navalny's treatment and deteriorating condition, as you know, polonium it's a very radioactive agent. I'm not sure that was the poison that was used this time, or Navalny wouldn't be making these statements because he'd be dead. He'd be room temperature. But, Russia's agents have used poison effectively in the past. It is said that this particular poison was placed in his underpants. Went in actually through his groin. This has caused international outrage and prompted his allies to call the nationwide protests. Police detained several Navalny associates in Moscow and moved to disperse unauthorized demonstrations across Russia, arresting many people. In his speech, Putin pointed to Russia's moves to modernize its nuclear arsenal, which it has done, to modernize its anti-missile forces, which it has done, and it has made these very modern, very capable anti-missile systems mobile. All the missile systems that are the most terrible, multi-warhead, hypersonic, glide vehicle weapons are all mobile. And they're out of the hangar. They're driving around somewhere in the forests. That happened. We covered it here on this program about 3 weeks ago. They're out there. They're driving around. They're not in the bunker anymore. And these hypersonic weapons are virtually unstoppable. Once the missile goes up, the nose cone opens up. The warheads, 10 or more, come out. Some of them are, 50 kilotons, all the way up to about 1 megaton. That's a very big weapon, a 1 megaton weapon. But, nuclear is as nuclear does. What happens then is these different glide vehicles achieve hypersonic speeds. They travel 4 to 6 times the speed of sound. Very difficult and very fast. And they don't just fall, they steer. They can change course, and they can confuse defensive systems. And the casings are stealthy. That is to say, you can't see them with radar. So not only are they traveling very fast, but they are also very hard to see. They're the best weapons in the world. And I'm not saying that they would do a first strike against the United States. That would be very silly. But they could strike against NATO, and they might be successful. In an apparent reference to the U.S. and its allies, the Russian leader denounced those who impose unlawful, politically motivated economic sanctions and crude attempts to enforce its will on others. He said Russia has shown restraint, which I believe it has, and often refrained from even vocally responding to openly boorish actions by others. Virtual Joe, last week, actually imposed new sanctions on Russia for interfering in the 2020 U.S. presidential election, but he didn't put any sanctions against China for doing that, only Russia, and for the involvement in the solar wind hack of federal agencies, activities Moscow has denied. The U.S. ordered 10 Russian diplomats expelled. Russia responded by expelling U.S. diplomats. This is not a good thing. We don't like to see people not speaking to one another, because if they're not speaking, they can very easily shoot. And Stoker, you picked up on a very good point there. The banking system is the enemy. Russia is one of the few countries in the world that does not belong to the global banking system. They're not part of the international banking cartel. And, of course, one of the other ones was Libya, and you saw what happened to them. Hillary Clinton took care of them. But Russia's a different story. Russia's quite formidable, and Russia has been surviving, even though the sanctions have been put on them, even though the ruble was brutally attacked and destroyed. Russia came through it all, and everyone in Europe knows Russian-built stuff is the best. I will continue with this, quote, Russia has its own interests, and we will defend in line with the international law. That's what Putin said today. I continue, he says, if somebody refuses to understand this obvious thing, is reluctant to conduct a dialogue and chooses a selfish and arrogant tone, Russia will find a way to defend its position. Some countries have developed a nasty habit of bullying Russia for any reason or without any reason at all. It has become a new sport. And he's bringing it. He is bringing it. I could just tell you he harshly criticized Virtual Joe and NATO for failing to condemn what he described as a botched coup attempt and a failed plot to assassinate Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko, allegedly involving a blockade of the country's capital, power cuts, and cyber attacks. Now, Belarusian and Russian security agencies arrested the alleged coup plotters in Moscow earlier this month. I wish, more than you know, more than I can say, I wish that they would arrest the coup perpetrators in this country. I will continue with his statement here. He says, the practice of organizing coups and planning political assassinations by top officials goes over the top and crosses all boundaries. And he's right. He's right. He's drawing parallels to plots against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and the popular protests that led to the ouster of Ukraine's former Russian-friendly president, Viktor Yanukovych, in 2014. We've talked a lot about that on this program. Russia responded to Yanukovych's ouster by annexing Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula, which they voted to do. Putin dedicated most of the annual address to domestic issues, hailing the nation's response to the coronavirus pandemic. They've just got a leg up on it now. He said the quick development of 3 coronavirus vaccines underline Russia's technological and industrial potential. He called for a quicker pace of immunizations, voicing hope the country would achieve collective immunity this fall. What we call herd immunity takes place when the majority of the people have caught the virus and have built their own antibodies and recovered from it. That's called herd immunity. Collective immunity is when a significant portion of the society has been inoculated against the virus. And then what happens is the virus does not have a host in which to grow. Now, there is significant argument over there about the efficacy of the vaccine compared to the efficacy of the human immune system. Right now, according to the National Institutes of Health, the human immune system is about 98% efficient, which means a person that has been infected with the made-for-TV virus overcomes it by building their own antibodies and getting well. Only has a 2% chance, and it's actually less than that now. It's about 1.3% chance of being reinfected with the same strain. Even variants are fought off fairly easily because the immune system of the human body is so efficient. The vaccine, even by the vaccine makers themselves, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer, say their vaccines at best are 94% efficient. So your human immune system is about 4% more efficient at fighting off the virus than the vaccine is in preventing you from being reinfected. You make your own decision what you want to do, but them's the facts, okay? I'm not saying that everybody has the same immune system, but I am saying when the human immune system can fight this off and put you back in health again, you stand less of a chance of contracting the disease or a variant than you do with the vaccine. And that's just medical fact. But not everybody can fight off the disease. Some people are obese, they have diabetes, they have heart problems, they have other issues that we call comorbidities that make it very tough to fight this off. Myself, I was able to fight it off in about 3 days, mildly symptomatic. The guy that I met today, both he and his wife, bedridden for 2 weeks. They didn't get out of bed for 2 weeks. It took them a while to beat it. It was last summer, but they came through it, and now they're immune. And the good news about, 1 million people a day contracting it, where we had these infection numbers that were off the charts, is also 1 million people a day were being cured by their own immune systems. So, listen, this is America Free Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew. We're here every Wednesday, every Sunday at 8 p.m. And I so appreciate you being here with me. And I want you to go out and look for the good in people and help it to grow every day. We're as positive as we can be here in this program. We try to keep you informed with the truth so you can make logical decisions and safe decisions for you and your family and your community. We're not alarmists. We're truthists. This is where the truth freaks hang out. And we're so glad that you've been part of Revolution Radio tonight here on freedomslips.com. Now go out there, do great things, and remember who you are. This is the big thing. I used to tell my kids when they leave for school in the morning, remember who you are. It means not where you came from or what your family name is. It goes way beyond that. Remember, you are a divine being with a spark of source in you. So live up to it. And we'll see you Sunday at 8 p.m. right here on America Free Radio. Peace, Earth Explorers.